We are very delighted to begin our first debate of the CD and DC series. And the topic of today's debate is judges should not appoint judges. I, on my behalf and on behalf of the speakers for and against, before we start the debate, I would just like to throw some light on the topic as to how this phrase, judges appointing judges, it was for the first time in the year 1973 when Justice A.N. Ray was appointed as the Chief Justice of India, superseding 3 senior-most judges. Then in the year 1977, Justice M.H. Baig was appointed, superseding senior-most judges. After that, a petition came to be filed before the Supreme Court, which was titled as S.P. Gupta versus President of India, in which for the first time, the controversy with regard to the appointment of judges arose. And it was for the first time that the primacy for appointment of judges was given to the President, that is the executive. And the Chief Justice of India only had the power to give his opinion. Thereafter, another judgment. This was in the year 1982, and it took almost 11 years, that is in the year 1993, that a judgment came, Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India, where for the first time, the Chief Justice of India's opinion got credence. And thereafter, there were other judgments. And finally, the government in the year 2014 came up with National Judicial Appointment Commission Act 2014, and which was struck down by the Supreme Court, declaring it to be unconstitutional and void. So here we, as per the format of this debate, we would first have the voting of the House. The audience would vote whether judges should appoint judges. We should have A's and No's. The audience who believe that the judges should be appointed by the judges, they may raise their hands first so that we have an opinion before the debate, and thereafter, after the debate, we'll be having another opinion, another vote of rounds. So the audience who may raise their hands saying that, who believe that the judges should appoint judges, we can have a count, please. Hands raised of the audience who believe otherwise, that is against the motion. Judges should not be appointed by the judges. So the topic for the debate is judges should not be appointed by the judges. This is the topic of the debate. And by commencing this debate, I call upon the first speaker for the motion, Shri Prashant Bhushan, Senior Advocate.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Before I begin, I want to just say that I am so happy to be at this beautiful college at the inaugural of this Oxford Union style, and I wish to congratulate the faculty and the students here and to organize this debate. So initially the Constitution said that judges will be appointed by the President in consultation with the Chief Justice of India. This was taken literally to mean mere consultation, and there were various governments which went against the advice of the Chief Justice. Thereafter, the second judge's judgment came, the 1993 judgment, which said that no consultation here means concurrence. So you cannot appoint a judge without the concurrence of the Chief Justice. And then they said, therefore, primacy for appointment has to be with the Chief Justice. And then they further said that the Chief Justice would not mean only the Chief Justice, it should mean Chief Justice in consultation with his senior colleagues. In the case of appointments to the Supreme Court, his senior 4 colleagues, and in the case of appointments to the High Court, his senior 2 colleagues. And they spelt out the procedure. They said that first the recommendation will be made by this collegium regarding the selection of judges. The government has only one role, which is it can either accept or reject or send back the recommendation to the collegium by rejecting it and raising objections. Thereafter, if the collegium unanimously, the collegium of the senior 3 or 5 judges, unanimously reiterates that recommendation, then the government will have no option but to appoint them. So that became the system. But unfortunately, what is happening currently is that when recommendations are being made by the collegium, the current government sometimes sits on it for years altogether, sometimes 2 years, 3 years, just doesn't respond to that, with the result that those recommendations don't get through. On occasion, when they send it back, if they send it back with objections saying that they don't want this appointment, and thereafter also the collegium unanimously reiterates it, even then we have seen many cases where the government still does not issue the notification, though under the law they have no right not to issue the notification after unanimous reiteration by the collegium. So this is how the government has de facto virtually thwarted, or to a substantial extent thwarted, the second judge's case. And thereafter even the judgment where they struck down the National Judicial Appointments Act, which was a constitutional amendment, on the ground. They struck it down on the ground that in that act, the government gets a substantial say in the appointment at the initial stage itself, because the law minister is a member of the selecting committee. Thereafter, some jurists have to be appointed, and there too the law minister plays a role. And thereafter, the secretariat of this National Judicial Appointments Commission vests with the law ministry. So they said that because here the government has a substantial say in appointments, therefore this violates the principle that we have laid down, that judges should be selected by judges, and therefore they struck it down. I am speaking for the motion, but I want to make it clear. I believe that judges should not appoint judges, but I also believe that the present system of judges selecting judges is slightly better than government selecting judges, or even the government having a substantial say in appointing judges. Because if you see the role of the judiciary, apart from deciding cases, etc., one very important role of the judiciary is to protect fundamental rights of citizens from the onslaughts mainly of the government, and also to ensure that that the executive does not transgress the bounds of its powers, that they do the job which has been entrusted to them, and therefore independence of the judiciary from the executive and from the legislature is very important. It is indeed very important, and therefore they said that the government should play a very minimal role in the matter of selection of judges, because if they play a significant role, that will make the judiciary somewhat dependent upon the government or somewhat beholden to the government. So that was the principle that was laid down. And I believe that principle is a correct principle. But unfortunately, even after the collegium system has been implemented, what we are seeing are appointments which are not being made by following a proper system of selection. There is no criteria which has been laid down by the collegium for selecting judges. See, before you select somebody for appointment as a judge, you have to first decide what is it that you are looking for in that person for being appointed a judge. What are the qualities that you need in a judge? If you ask any Chief Justice, retired Chief Justice, all right, how did you select judges? They will say that we looked at competence and we looked at integrity. Now the question is, are these the only two relevant qualities for selecting judges or for judges? Is it not important that the judges should have an understanding and sensitivity to the socio-economic reality of the country? Is it not important that judges should have a judicial temperament? There are competent judges. One judge I can name, I don't want to name him. He was very competent, very intelligent, very competent, honest also. But he lacked judicial temperament totally. He would, before any lawyer could start his arguments, he would start lecturing the judge. So therefore, you need to lay down a full criteria, detailed criteria of what is it, what are the qualities that you are looking for in a judge. And thereafter have a system of measuring different candidates. You may have shortlisted, let us say if 10 judges have to be appointed, you can shortlist 50 people or 100 people or whatever. And then within those 50 or 100 people, you see who are the fittest, who fulfill that criteria which you have laid down, and your method of judging people on that criteria should also be somewhat objective, not totally subjective. And then you need to have some transparency in the selection of judges. Very often what happens is that people come to know that so-and-so has been appointed only after the appointment has been made. And after the appointment has been made, you can't do anything, even if you know that this judge is totally corrupt or that he had done this, that or the other, which makes him unfit to be appointed a judge. You can't do anything because thereafter he can only be removed by impeachment, which is an impractical, very difficult process. So therefore, you need to have some minimum transparency as well in the selection of judges. At least the names of the shortlisted candidates should be published on a website so that people who are familiar with those people, who have some information, good or bad, about those people, can send that information to the selecting committee so that they can act on the basis of that information. But unfortunately, that is not being done. So today what is happening, what is factually happening in the selection of judges by the collegium is that every member of the collegium, if there are 5 members in the collegium, each one knows a few judges. Suppose some High Court judge has to be appointed. Now they will know a few candidates who may in their view, fit the criteria. They may have their own favorites, they may have their own proteges. They don't know the whole list of people who may be eligible, who may be superior to them. But on the basis, because these are sitting judges, they are very, very busy people. They have no time to devote to all this business of selecting judges. In India today, 100 judges have to be selected every year in the High Courts and the Supreme Court. Many more judges have to be transferred. Now, in order to evaluate even say 500 shortlisted people for appointment of those 100 judges, you need to study their record and their entire record in great detail in order to select the best amongst them. The sitting judges have no time to do that, and therefore nepotism has flourished in this whole system of judges selecting judges. Members of the collegium who know particular people, they say, oh, so-and-so is very good. Another person of the collegium will say, no, I know so-and-so is very good. Somebody else will say, no, I know so-and-so is very good. And they all get together and select those people without having a proper laid down criteria, without having a proper system of selection, and therefore nepotism thrives. And therefore, what we need is a full-time body to select judges. This full-time body should be given a secretariat, but the members of that selecting body should be able to devote full time to the business of selecting judges of the High Court and the Supreme Court. It can't be an ex officio body of 3 senior judges, 1 law minister, and so on. It has to be a full-time body. And it has to be completely independent of the government. Now, questions have been raised as to how such a body will be selected. Suppose you have a full-time Judicial Appointments Commission which is required to be independent of the government. How would you select such a body? So, to my mind, there can be many methods. UK has a system. They have a Judicial Appointments Commission, which is a full-time body. They have laid down a detailed criteria for selecting judges, and they have some minimum degree of transparency as well. In India, the same thing can be done. You can select the members of the selection of this full-time selection committee by a committee of, say, 3 senior judges of the Supreme Court. You can have 1 person from the government, the law minister. You can have 1 leader of opposition. You can also have the Chief Election Commissioner. Of course, today the Chief Election Commissioner is also not very independent, but we hope that in the time to come, the Chief Election Commissioner will become independent. And you can have the Comptroller and Auditor General. These are constitutional posts. So you have these 7 people selecting a selection committee, Judicial Appointments Commission of 5 persons or 7 persons, and these people then lay down a criteria. They have a proper method of evaluating people on that criteria. They have some kind of transparency, and then they select judges. Today's system of judges selecting judges or sitting judges selecting judges has led to enormous nepotism. It has led to selection of unfit people. It has led to leaving out some of the best people who needed to have been selected, but they have not been selected because members of the collegium, they were not proteges, etc., of the members of the collegium. So therefore I say that we should not have, though this method of judges selecting judges is slightly superior to government selecting judges, it has led to more independent appointments. And yet, I feel that this is not an ideal system. Far from being an ideal system, it is not the correct system, because this inevitably will lead to nepotism, because these judges do not have time to evaluate people properly. That can only be done by a full-time body, and that is why I say that judges should not be selecting judges. There should be a full-time Judicial Appointments Commission. That commission should be independent. It should be appointed by a broad-based committee, and that commission should function with a fair degree of transparency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the thought-provoking analysis of the topic. Judges should not be appointed by judges. You spoke about nepotism. You spoke about full-time body. You spoke about the limitation of the judges on account of their limited scope of selecting the judges. Now I call upon the second speaker against the motion, Shri Gopal Shankar Narayan, Senior Advocate.
Once again, thank you to the chair, and thank you so much to everybody at Delhi College for having me. It's an honor. It's a school that I've always read of, coming from a Jesuit institution in Bangalore. It's one of the great boarding schools of the country, and I can't believe that I'm actually within its hallowed portals addressing all of you on a topic which is a subject of much debate. It of course causes a certain amount of nervousness when you follow a legend like Mr. Bhushan, especially when you speak against him. I encounter this often, clammy hands and nervousness when I have to encounter him in the Supreme Court, and we have occasionally been on opposite sides, more often on the same side. On this topic, however, I am afraid that I have to take a different view. I think the past has been touched upon at some length about why we have the system that we do and how it has gone through changes in the portals of justice. But let me just first start with the topic itself, which is that this House believes that judges should not appoint judges. This, very honestly, if I'm pedantic and if I'm going to get into semantics like most us lawyers break our daily bread, this is not a topic that applies to this country, because in our country, even today, judges are appointed by the President of India, by his warrant. It is only a recommendation that comes from a collegium of senior judges of the court, and it is then routed through the government and the law ministry and the intelligence bureau, who all come with their gossipy inputs about why a certain candidate is good or bad. Eventually, the appointment is done by the president. Therefore, the first question is, does this topic apply to India? But I am presuming against myself that this topic does apply to India. So let's go with that. Let's go with why this country moved from having only the executive, that is the president, and in this Westminster system of government that we have adopted from our erstwhile colonial masters, it happens to be a system where the Council of Ministers' advice is binding on the president. Now that was the system that prevailed right into the autumn of 1993. So for a good 43 years we were appointing judges without a collegium system. Now that system gave us the following. It gave us a supersession of our three senior-most judges in 1973 on the day that Sachin Tendulkar was born, coincidentally, 24th of April 1973, when the judgment in Keshav Nanda Bharati came. It was the largest bench constituted in the Supreme Court of 13 judges sitting together to put control on the power of the executive to, through Parliament, amend the Constitution to in any way upset its basic features. So 7:6, the bench said, look, this can't be done. That very afternoon, Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister, who was upset with this decision, got her very loyal coterie of men together who all decided, look, this can't go on, so let us change the very judges who gave this decision. So judges 1, 2, 3, 4, that is Sikri, Shalat, Grover, Hegde, all four learnt over the radio that evening that judge number 5 was made Chief Justice of India in this erstwhile system. The first 4 all resigned, even though Sikri was retiring the next day, resigned. And 4 years later, this was touched upon by the chair as well, when Justice H.R. Khanna, one of the greatest judges we've ever had, his portrait hangs in court number 2 in the Supreme Court, decided to dissent during the emergency against the excesses that the emergency was inflicting on the people of this country by throwing political opponents into jail. When he was the sole judge in a bench of 5 judges who gave a view in favor of the citizenry. He, who was to become Chief Justice the next week, was overlooked again, and Justice Beg was appointed as Chief Justice of India. So this alternative to judges appointing judges gave us 2 infamous supersessions. It also gave us the first and only instance in our history of a judge being impeached. Impeachment motions were initiated against Justice V. Ramaswamy of the Supreme Court because of his actions previously when he was Chief Justice of the Punjab and Haryana High Court. What this period of our history, in a pre-collegium stage, did not give us is they did not give us a woman Chief Justice of India, which we are going to have now. Justice Nagaratna is going to be the first Chief Justice of India who is a woman, and that is in a system where judges appoint judges. What the pre-1993 system did not give us was a judge who came from a historically oppressed SC/ST community. We didn't have a Chief Justice. In the collegium period, we have already had Justice K.G. Balakrishnan, who held the top post, and 2 Chief Justices from now, Justice B.R. Gawai, who presently sits in court number 3, will hold that high post. So when judges appoint judges, it's not that things are going terribly wrong. We've had 50 Chief Justices of India till today. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, who is Chief Justice of India today, is the 50th. The first 40 of them all came through a collegium system. The first 40 of them have had many criticisms levied on them, including of corruption, of bias, of communal attitudes, of conservative judgments, of deferring to the executive. I am not saying that the last 10 have been gloriously different, but they have in many ways been refreshing. Starting with the 41st, Chief Justice R.M. Lodha, one of the most respected Chief Justices we have ever had in the history of our country, and I'm sure Mr. Bhushan will also agree. Now, this shows you the two alternatives that this country has experienced. Now, of course, Mr. Bhushan and his friends would have us believe that there is some better system out there where it's not about judges appointing judges. But out of curiosity, because so far in the 15 minutes that Mr. Bhushan had, all I heard was about how bad it is to have judges appointing judges without any alternative being proffered. And isn't that the problem with this country? We are so quick at finding problems, but in fact there may not be any major problem that requires an upheaval. Now, what are the various systems that exist across the world? Because surely my friends haven't suggested or proffered an option. The options which exist are as follows. Option 1, have the executive solely appoint a judge. And who is the number one litigator in the country? The executive. The reason for all these cases going into backlogs is because the government will go running all the way up to the Supreme Court because some babu has signed off on saying 700 rupees pension not be given to this man, so we'll go all the way to the Supreme Court and we'll challenge it. And who is that litigant? It's the Supreme Court. It's the Supreme Court's biggest litigant, which is the government. Every time for 300 rupees loaf of bread, the great O. Henry story, if there is a theft, to challenge that fellow's bail, you'll go running all the way up to the Supreme Court. That's again the government coming. Now, do you want that person, the government, to decide who the judge will be, who will decide that case in his favor? Surely we are not going to have that system. So what's the alternative? The alternative is to have, as the British refer to in their National Judicial Commission, representatives of laymen, people from the public that they will select and put on their committees to start taking decisions. Now, I think a large number of you are laymen. I would like you to tell me that between Justice Vikram Nath of the Supreme Court and Justice Suryakant of the Supreme Court, what do all of you think? Who's a better choice to be Chief Justice? They're both going to be Chief Justice of India, by the way. You don't have a clue, do you, most of you? Now, if we are supposed to invite laymen in onto this committee to represent the public, who are they going to be? I'm sure Rajdeep Sardesai, Barka Dutt, Arnab Goswami will all have diametrically opposite views. So we can't have representative of media, Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma. Where are we headed with this? How do you decide who is that person who is so capable of neutral decision making that we will put that person on a committee to decide who will be our Supreme Court or High Court judges? Because really, this debate is only about where the judges get into the appointment process. The judges get into it only for Supreme Court judges and High Court judges, right? In the 55 years or so, when we had the previous system, there were only 2 lawyers who were directly appointed to the Supreme Court of India as judges. Only 2. In the last 8 years, we have had 6, including a woman. And these are people who had the most lucrative practices in the country, who were the top lawyers in the court where Mr. Bhushan and I plight our trust. People like Justice Uday Lalit, Justice Rohinton Nariman, Justice Indu Malhotra, Justice Vishwanathan, Justice Narasimha, all top practitioners. All of them were given an opportunity to serve the institution. And they were making, money-wise, as much salary as they would get in a month as a judge, they were making in 3 minutes standing and arguing in the Supreme Court, and they sacrificed that to accept this offer of judgeship. Who selected them? Judges did. And today, this system as it stands involves the following. Judges decide and shortlist a bunch of names who they think will fit this high office. And a high office which has many duties to discharge. Adjudication is only one of them. A person who knows the system knows that apart from adjudication, there are several administrative duties you have. When you're the Chief Justice of a High Court, for example, you are handling all the employees of that High Court. Everyone from a sweeper all the way up to the senior registrar and his employment, his service laws, everything is in your hands. Now, will laymen be able to decide who has the skill set for all of that? Remember also, every time somebody tells you that other countries have different systems, other countries don't have the most powerful Supreme Court in the world. The Indian Supreme Court is the only court in the world who has the power specifically given to it to strike down a law made by Parliament, to strike down a constitutional amendment as they did with this NJAC in 2016. No other court has that. The US court doesn't have it, 9 of them sitting together. The UK Supreme Court doesn't have it. South Africa doesn't have it. Only India does. And when you take a solemn oath on the Constitution to discharge that obligation where you will be counter-majoritarian, the selection process has to be extremely nuanced. Today, when names are recommended, the only way that the government can stymie it is by sitting on the file. That's all they can do. They can't come with their own names and ensure that the will of the most wise judges in our country are in any way stymied. I strongly believe, and it's been a saga which is continuing in this country, that while there is that old adage, a good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge, I think it's time that we all defer to our judges and trust them as they need to be trusted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gopal. Judges should be appointed by the judges, is your say, unless and until we have a very good alternative to this process. Now I call upon the second speaker for the motion, Mr. Pushyamitra Bhargav, our mayor and an advocate, prominent advocate. Please.
सदन में आया विषय जजेस शुड नॉट अपॉइंट द जजेस, और इस विषय के पक्ष में बोलने के लिए मैं आपके समक्ष उपस्थित हूँ। उसके पहले मैं दिल्ली कॉलेज के एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को और स्पेशली यहाँ की प्रिंसिपल बिंद्रा मैडम को पूरे शहर की तरफ से बधाई देना चाहता हूँ। इस शहर में कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल डिबेट हों और वो भी ऑक्सफोर्ड लेवल से, उसकी शुरुआत उन्होंने की है। इसलिए पूरे शहर की तरफ से और इस शहर को पढ़ने लिखने के काम में भी आगे बढ़ाने का जो आपने किया है काम, उसके लिए धन्यवाद। विषय पर आते हुए, प्रशांत जी ने हम सबके बीच समाधान को रखने की कोशिश की और गोपाल जी ने ये बताया कि इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ जुडिशरी और जिस आधार पर अभी तक जजेस अपॉइंट होते रहे हैं वो दुनिया का सबसे अच्छा सिस्टम है। 73 में जो हुआ वो आपने सुना, फिर 93 में पूरी कमान जजेस के हाथ में आ गई कि वो अपना सिलेक्शन कर कर राष्ट्रपति को भेजें और राष्ट्रपति जजेस की नियुक्ति करें। लेकिन एक ऐसा उदाहरण नहीं है कि राष्ट्रपति ने किसी के नाम को रिजेक्ट किया। इसलिए 93 से लेकर आज 2024 तक जजेस आर अपॉइंटिंग द जजेस, और इन 31 सालों के इतिहास में हमको इस बात पे विचार करना पड़ेगा कि क्या इन 31 सालों के बाद देश की जुडिशरी, देश का जुडिशियल सिस्टम सही रास्ते पे है। 93 के पहले प्रेसिडेंट अपने तरीके से अपॉइंट करते थे, उसकी कुछ कमियां रही होंगी, लेकिन 31 साल अवसर देने के बाद कैन वी से दैट वी हैव अ गुड जुडिशियल सिस्टम, गुड प्रोसीजर ऑफ अपॉइंटिंग जजेस? डू वी हैव a transparent system to know that the right person has been appointed as the High Court judge. और किसी को भी अपॉइंटमेंट देने के 3 बेसिक पैरामीटर होते हैं जो मैं मानता हूं. एक, उसको अपॉइंट करने की कोई एलिजिबिलिटी और उसका कोई प्रोसीजर. और देश के सबसे बड़े संस्थान का सिस्टम संविधान से तय होता है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन से तय होता है. हम कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन डिबेट में हैं और भारत के संविधान में लिखा है कि देश के राष्ट्रपति जजेस अपॉइंट करेंगे. और ऐसा कोई भी व्यक्ति जिसने अपने 10 साल की वकालत पूरी की हो वो हाईकोर्ट जज अपॉइंट हो सकता है. 31 साल में यदि कोई वकील बनता है तो वो अपॉइंट क्यों नहीं होता है, यह भी एक प्रश्न है. दूसरा, इस देश में दिल्ली कॉलेज में यदि 5th क्लास में किसी स्टूडेंट को पढ़ना हो तो उसको एंट्रेंस देनी पड़ती है, इंटरव्यू देना पड़ता है. और पिछले 31 साल का इस देश का इतिहास है कि जजेस के फॉर्मल इंटरव्यू में आप पंजाबी हैं या मुना पंजाबी हैं, इस प्रश्न के बाद रिजेक्शन हो जाता है. तो ना तो एलिजिबिलिटी डिसाइडेड है, ना प्रोसीजर डिसाइडेड है. एक केशवानंद भारती के केस में इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ जुडिशरी के आधार पर बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर जो हमारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का माना गया था और उसी के आधार पर 93 में जजेस को अपॉइंट करना शुरू किया. और फिर 2015 में अपने जजमेंट में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने लिखा कि जो नया कानून है वो जुडिशरी को प्राइमेसी नहीं देता है, सिस्टम में इतने सफिशिएंट प्रोविजन नहीं है कि इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ जुडिशरी रहेगी. तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट को अपने फैसले में यह भी बताना था कि क्या सफिशिएंट रहेगा कि इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ जुडिशरी रहे. रोहिंटन नरीमन ने कहा है कि वी हैव अ वर्स्ट सिस्टम ऑफ अपॉइंटिंग जजेस बट वी डोंट हैव अदर थिंग और वी डोंट हैव बेटर सिस्टम जो इसको रिप्लेस कर पाए. दुष्यंत दवे जी ने अभी कुछ दिन पहले कहा है कि अगर जजेस को अपॉइंट करेंगे, ये देश के लिए सबसे खराब बात इसलिए है कि वी हैव जजेस जिन्होंने अपने पूरे टेन्योर में जजमेंट्स लिखे ही नहीं, जजमेंट्स डिलीवर ही नहीं किए. और जब जुडिशरी को पिछले 31 साल में अवसर मिला तो उनको ये बताना पड़ेगा कि टोटल वैकेंसी जो आज इस देश में है या टोटल अवेलेबल पोस्ट हैं, करीब 1111 पोस्ट हैं, उसमें से आज भी 360 खाली है. देयर इज नो प्रोसीजर कि जज के पोस्ट खाली होने के पहले नया जज अपॉइंट हो जाए. लाखों केसेस की पेंडेंसी है. तो प्रश्न ये नहीं है कि जज कौन बनाएगा, प्रश्न ये है कि जब सिविल जज के लिए सिलेक्शन होता है, एग्ज़ाम होती है, इंटरव्यू होता है, एडीजी के लिए सिलेक्शन होता है, एग्ज़ाम होती है, इंटरव्यू होता है, तो जब हम हाई कोर्ट जज बना रहे हैं तो देयर शुड बी सम प्रोसेस, देयर शुड बी सम एग्जामिनेशन, देयर शुड बी सम सिस्टम जिससे ये पता चले कि ये एक बेसिक एग्ज़ाम जो लोअर जुडिशरी के जज को पास करना चाहिए वो हाई कोर्ट का जज पास कर सकता है कि नहीं कर सकता है. तो ऐसा कोई सिस्टम इवॉल्व हो, ऐसा कोई प्रोसीजर हो जो 31 साल में नहीं हो पाया. इसलिए यह प्रश्न चिन्ह खड़ा होता है कि जजेस शुड नॉट अपॉइंट जजेस. और मैं इस सदन में इस विषय के पक्ष में इसीलिए बोल रहा हूं कि भारत में जब भारत सरकार ने 2015 में नया कानून बनाया उसमें प्राइमेसी जजेस के पास ही थी. टॉप 3 जजेस, 2 जूरिस्ट जो अपॉइंट होने थे, उसको अपॉइंट करने की कमिटी में भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट का हस्तक्षेप था. अगर 6 लोग मिलकर अगर इस देश में जजेस अपॉइंट करें जिसमें से 3 सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जजेस हों और 2 देश के जूरिस्ट हों तो 5 लोग ऐसे होंगे जो देश के जुडिशियल सिस्टम को समझते हों. अगर ये 5 लोग भी जज नहीं बना सकते तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि और कोई सिस्टम नहीं है जो अच्छे जजेस को अपॉइंट कर पाए. धन्यवाद.
धन्यवाद पुष्यमित्र जी. और आपने अपने विचार हमारे समक्ष रखे और एनजेसी के पक्ष में आपने अपनी बात कही. अब मैं सेकंड स्पीकर अगेंस्ट द मोशन हमारे वरिष्ठ अधिवक्ता श्री अजय बागड़िया को आमंत्रित करता हूं.
I hope I'm. Is this working. No, it's not. Had it been a political debate, I would have nomenclatured it as a sabotage. Fortunately, it's not even giving to speak was that after being asked to speak after Prashant Bhushan ji, Gopal Bhai, Pushyamitra Bhargav, an ordinary man like me coming on the stage and speaking is like serving a very badly cooked dessert after a fantastic meal. So you will excuse me for my impertinence and stupidity which flows during my course of these debating on this issue. I'll try be as brief as possible, as little and short as possible for two reasons. Number one, I had the principal who just walked out. I had the principal of my school sitting across, and I still don't have the audacity to speak too much in front of my principal. And secondly, I'm a lawyer, so I don't talk too much of sense unless I'm paid for it for a long period of time. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. Thank you. That was, of course, on the lighter side. Now, let me just get down to the brass tacks to tell you people what exactly are we debating here. What we are debating is appointment of judges of the High Court and the Supreme Court exclusively. We are not debating on the appointment of judges of the Civil Court, District Court, Trial Court, as we commonly nomenclature it. When we talk about appointments to the Trial Court, District Court, Sessions Court, there is no judges appointing judges. There is a procedure of examination that needs to be followed. And if it's an ADJ, sometimes selected and picked up from the bar, which is a very uncommon phenomenon. So we are talking about judges to be picked up to be appointed to the High Court and the Supreme Court alone. The collegium, which we call it, against which, of course, my learned friends have spoken, consists of if you talk about an appointment to the High Court, it speaks of the Chief Justice of the state and J1 and J2, which means the senior most judge after the Chief and the senior most judge after the number 2 judge. So that constitutes the collegium for appointment of a High Court judge. The name is sent from the High Court to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in turn as a collegium, I'm open to correction, but of the Chief Justice of India, J1 and J2, probably extended more a little bit depending on if there is a sitting judge from your respective state, then he'll be consulted, not necessarily form a part of the collegium, but he'll be consulted. Now subsequent to this, I have 5 more minutes or I've already consumed 5 minutes? Okay, I thought I've consumed 5 minutes already. So then this system, then it is sent to the government department, Department of Justice, and from the Department of Justice, there is a report which is requisitioned from the IB department, and depending on the report, the Supreme Court Collegium has 2 choices. One, to reiterate their choice and send it back to the Department of Justice, or to drop the names and send it back to the High Court that there is a negative report. After the reiteration, now this is something important, I would lay slight emphasis on this and please pay attention to this. If the collegium sends the name back again to the Department of Law and Justice, regardless of the government, they are under a constitutional duty to make that person concerned a judge. There is a judgment of PLR construction, all of us are aware on this side, aware of it, which says that within 4 weeks' time from a reiteration by the Supreme Court Collegium, you necessarily have to appoint a judge. The unfortunate part creeps in where? I have 2 names here whom I have picked, whose names were recommended in reiteration, but they were kept hanging deliberately by the government for a period of more than 1 year. Mr. Prashant Bhushan and Gopal Bhai are aware of these names. There is a gentleman called Somashekar Sundaran, who was first recommended in October 21, reiterated in January 23, and appointed in November 23. There is a diktat by the Supreme Court that you cannot keep these names hanging for more than 4 weeks. This is what the government does. 2. Now you're talking about the government giving the power of appointing judges and taking it away from the judges. All right, let's just, in that background, I'm submitting all this. If you were to give these powers, there's another name, your college mate, Aditya Sondhi, another name, which Gopal Bhai just mentioned. Name sent, reiterated, repeated, kept hanging for some time to the extent to which he withdrew his name and withdrew himself from the elevation procedure. In 2014, the then existing government brought about a parallel medium or an alternate medium of appointing judges through NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission. Am I right? This was questioned naturally before the Supreme Court, not by the judges who were sitting there, but by an independent body, probably Supreme Court Advocate on Record Association amongst other petitioners. And in that judgment, the Supreme Court said, he said, nothing doing, you suggest a better and alternative method. I'm reminded of what Winston Churchill once said, and I'm a great admirer of that man. Winston Churchill once said, he said, democracy may be the worst form of government, but the others are still worse. So I'll repeat it. For collegium system. The collegium system may not be a very great system of appointment of judges, but all the rest of them, besides them, are still worse. Give me one good system which is without flaw, which has infirmity. Any system which you bring in place, any system which includes any participation of an individual or any ideology, will always have its infirmities and flaws. There is nothing like no flaw system. You are not living in a robotic nation where robots are asked to pick up people random from the society and different. And then again, if you don't talk about judges, let's think of something in the alternative. I'll tell you what this NJAC did. This NJAC talked about constitution of a body of 6 people. 3 top judges of the Supreme Court, 1 law minister of the existing government, who is obviously going to be pro-government because he is law minister of the government, and 2 eminent persons, period. Now what is an eminent person? The National Judicial Appointment Commission and the law which brought into existence never mentioned what an eminent person is. Who is an eminent person? According to me, my friend Mr. Om Singh Chauhan sitting across here, who is my classmate, is an eminent person. The new singing sensation Kishore Wadhwani, which we keep hearing all the time, is an eminent person according to me. Can you possibly, I'm not equating you Om with Kishore Wadhwani, please don't take an offense to it, but I'm just giving an example. What eminent persons are there and what is an eminent person? And how can you possibly have people, just pass this question to yourself, ladies and gentlemen, how can you have somebody who has nothing to do with the stream of judiciary to pick up people for the judicial system? How much time left? 1 minute, okay, 1 minute to go. 30 seconds, all right. Give me 1 minute extra. The fact that I'm coming from your school here, you can extend it to 1 minute. All right, so what, can you have a doctor selecting a judge? Dr. Deepak Kulkarni, he's a very renowned doctor, a very dear friend of mine. Can he select a judge? It's like asking me to select a doctor for a brain surgery. Can I do that? Can you people select an engineer to construct your house? Can you select an automobile engineer to select a judge? What business does he have? So you need to have people who are a part of the system, who can select people from the system. Judges appoint judges only to the extent that they hear and see people appearing before them every day and night in the court, and that is what leads to their selection. And that is the best way to elect and select judges. If there is no alternative method, till you have an alternate method, stop criticizing what you have in life. I'll use a sentence in Hindi, आपकी पड़ोसन बहुत खूबसूरत है, लेकिन जब तक पड़ोसन आपके झांसे में नहीं हो जाती, जब तक अपनी पत्नी से काम चलाना जरूरी है. I'll close it here. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
With your analysis and inimitable style of oratory, now we have the third speaker for the motion, Ms. Avani Bansal.
आदरणीय मंच और यहाँ उपस्थित सभी लोगों को नमस्कार। आज सदन में विषय है कि क्या जजेस को जजेस की नियुक्ति करनी चाहिए, शुड जजेस अपॉइंट जजेस। और आज मैं आपके सामने यहाँ पे इस विषय के पक्ष में बोलने जा रही हूँ। लेकिन अपने विचार रखने के पहले मैं आपसे कुछ सवाल पूछना चाहती हूँ। क्या आपको आश्चर्य होगा यदि मैंने आपको कहा कि अभी तक भारत में जितने भी जजेस हुए हैं उसमें लगभग 40% ब्राह्मण हैं, 50% अपर कास्ट और लगभग 10% SC/ST पॉपुलेशन को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं। क्या आपको आश्चर्य होगा यदि मैंने आपको कहा कि इतने बड़े देश में महिलाओं जजेस की संख्या को इन 2 हाथों पे गिना जा सकता है? क्या आपको इस बात से आश्चर्य होगा कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट, जिसे विपक्ष ने कहा कि दुनिया का सबसे पावरफुल कोर्ट, वो कौन सा मैटर कब सुनेगा, इसके ऊपर सिर्फ इतने बड़े देश में एक व्यक्ति का अधिकार है, चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया। तो यदि किसी एक पूरे स्टेट में इंटरनेट बंद कर दिया जाता है, उसका संवैधानिक स्टेटस बदल दिया जाता है, उस मामले की सुनवाई नहीं होती। रिजर्वेशन का जब डिबेट होता है और सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जजेस में इंदिरा साहनी की मैटर में कहा कि इस देश में 50% से अधिक रिजर्वेशन नहीं हो सकता, लेकिन तमिलनाडु राज्य में रिजर्वेशन 69% तक जाता है। गरीब लोगों के लिए 10% रिजर्वेशन ला दिया जाता है 50% सीलिंग के ऊपर, लेकिन अभी तक उस मामले की सुनवाई कोर्ट में नहीं होती। तो जो बार बार विपक्ष कहता है ना, विश्वास करो विश्वास करो, मैं आप सबसे कहना चाहती हूं कि जब किसी डब्बे के ऊपर उसका ढक्कन बंद कर दिया जाए और उस ढक्कन को सालों तक खोला नहीं जाए, तो उस डब्बे के अंदर जो कुछ भी है ना वो सड़ जाएगा। अब मैं पहले ये बात साफ कर दूं कि सरकार का जो रवैया था, जिसमें सरकार ने कहा कि जजेस अपॉइंट नहीं करेंगे, उसमें सरकारी बंदे होंगे, और जो उन्होंने रेशियो रखा उसमें सरकार का दबदबा था। ये बात मुझे मंजूर नहीं, और मैं नहीं चाहती कि किसी भी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी की सरकार क्यों ना बने, लेकिन सरकार जजेस नियुक्त करे। मिस्टर प्रशांत भूषण ने जो बात कही वो कोई राजनीतिक बात नहीं है, वो सत्य है। यदि दुनिया में सब जगह एक सिलेक्ट कमेटी बनाकर जजेस को नियुक्त किया जा सकता है, तो क्या ये आर्ग्यूमेंट देना कि कौन होगा उस कमेटी में, कौन होगा उस कमेटी में, क्या ये सवाल करना उचित है? आप रिटायर्ड जजेस को उस कमेटी में बैठाइए, आप उसमें सभी पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स को बिठाइए, आप आम लोगों को उसमें बैठाइए, आप एक्सपर्ट्स को बिठाइए, एक कमेटी बना दीजिए जो तय कर ले कि कौन उस कमेटी में बैठेगा। लेकिन ये ना पता होना कि कमेटी में कौन बैठेगा, उसका जवाब ये नहीं है कि जजेस को जज अपॉइंट करेंगे या जजेस को सरकारें अपॉइंट करेंगी। अब सवाल ये है कि भारत के संविधान निर्माता अंबेडकर जी के सामने क्या ये सवाल आया था? आपको जानकर आश्चर्य होगा, कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली डिबेट्स में डॉक्टर बी आर अंबेडकर कहते हैं कि इस सदन के सामने 3 प्रस्ताव हैं। पहला कि जजेस को जजेस अपॉइंट करें और चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया की जो बात है वो आखिरी मोहर हो। दूसरा कि जजेस को सरकार अपॉइंट करे, लेकिन 2/3 संसद की उसमें सहमति हो। और तीसरा कि राज्यसभा को अलग से, क्योंकि राज्यसभा एक्सपर्ट मेंबर्स है, तो राज्यसभा के मेंबर्स से अलग से कंसल्टेशन किया जाए। उन्होंने कहा कि इस सवाल का जवाब, एक तरफ इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ जुडिशरी, हम एक ऐसी न्यायपालिका चाहते हैं जो सशक्त हो, जो आजाद हो, लेकिन दूसरी तरफ हम एक ऐसी भी न्यायपालिका चाहते हैं जिसमें सबकी बराबर की हिस्सेदारी हो, जिसमें किसी एक पक्ष का दबदबा नहीं हो, और उसका बैलेंस बनाना बहुत जरूरी है। तो सवाल यह है कि जब संविधान निर्माताओं ने जजेस को यह रोल देना उचित नहीं समझा, और अंबेडकर साहब एक लाइन आगे जाके कहते हैं, वो कहते हैं कि चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया कोई बहुत एमिनेंट व्यक्ति होंगे, कोई समझदार व्यक्ति होंगे, इस बात पे मुझे डाउट नहीं है, लेकिन ये मान लेना कि कोई एक व्यक्ति बाकी सब समाजों के ऊपर है, ये गलतफहमी है। और यहां पर अमेरिका के जस्टिस कार्डोजो का जो कहना है कि जजेस भी इंसान होते हैं, यदि देश में कोई नीट के बच्चे बहुत लंबा चौड़ा प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, तो जो अखबार आप पढ़ते हैं, हम पढ़ते हैं, वही अखबार जजेस भी पढ़ते हैं। तो ये मान लेना कि जजेस के ऊपर कोई प्रेशर नहीं है, और वो भी आज के हालातों में, जब जस्टिस के लिए, जजेस के लिए कोई कूल ऑफ पीरियड नहीं होता है। आप बेंच से कोई जजमेंट देते हैं और कल आप किसी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी की जाके गोद में बैठ जाते हैं। आपको राजनीति करना है तो साफ तौर पर खुले खुले राजनीति करिए, लेकिन न्यायपालिका की कुर्सी पर बैठकर एक जजमेंट देना जो लाखों लोगों की जिंदगी को अफेक्ट करता है, और फिर जाके उस पॉलिटिकल पार्टी की गोद में बैठ जाना, अपना पोस्ट रिटायरमेंट बेनिफिट देखना। क्या मेरे विपक्ष के साथी ये चाहते हैं कि ये सदन आंखें बंद करके इन लोगों के ऊपर विश्वास कर ले? और मेरा सवाल है कि इस देश में चाहे वो प्रधानमंत्री हो, चाहे वो चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया हो, कानून के ऊपर कोई नहीं है, संविधान के ऊपर कोई नहीं है। इस देश में पक्ष या विपक्ष की जीत नहीं होनी चाहिए, इस देश में संविधान की जीत होनी चाहिए। और इसलिए जरूरी है कि ये पूरा सिस्टम जो बुना गया है, जिसमें आपको आश्चर्य होगा, इस देश के सारे जजेस केवल 350 परिवारों से आते हैं। एक रिपोर्ट के मुताबिक हर 3 जजेस में से एक जज किसी जज का बेटा है, किसी जज का रिलेटिव है। तो हमारे जैसे बच्चे, आपके बच्चे जो पूरी मेरिट के साथ यहां पर पढ़ते हैं और खड़े होते हैं, हमें न्यायपालिका में बैठने का अधिकार कौन देगा? और क्यों कोई जजेस ये बोले कि केवल कुछ ही परिवारों के बच्चे जो हैं वो न्यायपालिका में बैठेंगे? आपका सेक्सुअल ओरिएंटेशन कोई भी हो, लेकिन मैं सारे बच्चों से पूछना चाहती हूं, इस देश का संविधान हमें आजादी देता है, तो LGBTQI कम्युनिटी के जज का जब नाम सुप्रीम कोर्ट पे रेकमेंड किया गया, तो उसे पास क्यों नहीं किया गया? वो सरकार के द्वारा नहीं हुआ। तो हम देखें कि दुनिया भर में क्या हो रहा है। हमें किसी देश का अंधाधुंध फॉलो नहीं करना है, किसी देश का अंधाधुंध उनके पीछे नहीं चलना है, लेकिन जहां पे जो अच्छा है उसे सीखना चाहिए। हमें अमेरिकन मॉडल नहीं चाहिए, जहां पे अमेरिकन सुप्रीम कोर्ट में पहले यह देखा जाता है कि ये बताओ कि महिलाओं के अबॉर्शन के अधिकार पे तुम्हारा मत क्या है, फिर तुम्हें सुप्रीम कोर्ट में बैठाएंगे। हमें यूके का सिस्टम नहीं चाहिए कि रानी साहिबा ने कह दिया तो काम हो गया। हमारा देश दुनिया में प्रजातंत्र की एक मिसाल है और इस प्रजातंत्र की मिसाल को हमें आगे बढ़ाना है। जजेस शुड नॉट अपॉइंट जजेस। जजेस को अपॉइंट नहीं करेंगे, एक कमिटी बनेगी और कोई भी व्यक्ति इस देश में संविधान, ट्रांसपेरेंसी, अकाउंटेबिलिटी, निष्पक्षता, पारदर्शिता इसके ऊपर नहीं होना चाहिए। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद अवनी, आपने बहुत सशक्त रूप से अपनी बात इस सदन के सामने रखी है। अब मैं थर्ड स्पीकर अगेंस्ट द मोशन श्री विश्वजीत चौधरी को आमंत्रित करता हूं।
Lawyers and doctors, I really wish you never need them, but the idea is that at some point in your life you will need them. And that is precisely why we are discussing here that people who judge the lawyers and the prime importance that they enjoy in our society, of who appoints them, in what ways, and for what reason. And I have a number of arguments, and I have to say that, I had a beautiful speech prepared in the morning, but as soon as I walked through those doors, the first thing that hit me was one of legacy. It's going to be a very lousy argument if I just said that the collegium system is a legacy instrument and we should preserve it. So I'm not at all saying that. But I'm saying that there are certain aspects of it that we must preserve, and there are very good reasons for doing that. The first one of them, I'm going to be making three basic arguments, and the first one of them is about the separation of powers. We cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have three pillars of the government: the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. And if we think of any other model, we do concede that the other side has said that they're not suggesting any other model, but we can't be debating in a complete abstract, because there has to be something that goes beyond what we currently have. In order to replace the collegium system, it cannot be replaced by nothingness. There has to be something, and we've looked at different models. The closest that we've come to a substitute for the collegium system is the NJAC, the National Judicial Appointments Commission. But we see that it comes with its own problems. We spoke about diversity. Now the irony is, and it's very well noted, that we do not take into account what UK does or what the US does. But I'll give you two examples. The first one being from the UK. The first woman Chief Justice was not appointed till the late 2000s in the UK, when we in India had a woman Supreme Court judge in the 1989s. So UK is not a model that we can learn from. From the United States model, we've just seen the Supreme Court of the United States trampling on decades of jurisprudence on abortion rights, telling people what to do with their bodies. We cannot take that model. So where do we go with that? And our understanding is that the collegiate system, with all its flaws, is the best possible system that we can have. It is important that structurally speaking, and I'm speaking purely architecturally, that if there are three pillars, those three pillars bear their own weight. For one pillar to be seeping into the other one, and for one pillar to be giving weight to the other one, is obviously going to make it buckle under pressure. And that is precisely why we do not want judges to be appointed by anybody other than the judges who are their own conscience keepers. Because if we have that system, there is bound to be political interference, there is bound to be executive interference, and the hallmark and the starting point and the ending point of any democracy is rule of law, which demands an independent, impartial, fair, and competent judiciary. The second part that we want to talk about after, that I wanted to talk about after judicial function, is the argument of majoritarianism. And it has been brought, and some of the speakers hinted towards that why do we not have a say in appointing the judges? And here's why we do not have a say in appointing judges: because one of the main functions of the Supreme Court is to provide security, safety, and protection to everybody. Till the last person standing has all the rights, we've really not won. And that is precisely where the Supreme Court comes in. And this very collegium is the system that gave us judgments like Menaka Gandhi, that gave us judgments like Puttaswamy, which enshrined the right of privacy, that gave us judgments which made environmental right a fundamental right, that gave us judgments which also made other significant progresses in history, for instance, the Navtej Singh Johar judgment. So I think we need to keep in mind that if we have a judiciary which is not independent, it is bound to be subjected to majoritarian brute force, and that is the reason why collegium system is very, very important. The third, again, is an argument which somewhat, when you construct elaborate arguments, sometimes they collapse into themselves. It has taken about 4 decades for us to really perfect and to come to terms with what collegium means. 4 decades is not a short time. If we decide to switch to another system, there are 2 aspects to it. The first one is that the way we appoint a vast majority of our judges, which include judges that are in subordinate courts, that are in trial courts, right? So those are a different kettle of fish. But if we take into account any of the other judges and we look at their appointment in isolation to how appointments are being made, it becomes absolutely and abundantly clear that there is a lot of, obviously, expense, expertise, and time that we spend in appointing judges. Now, when we look at it in this particular aspect, what I want to say is that when we are looking at the appointment or going in with any other model other than the one that we've already chosen, it's going to be at least another 4 decades, as we've talked about who is an eminent person. Where do we get eminent persons from? How do we choose the eminent persons? What happens if there is a collapse of discussions amongst the government? Then where do we come up with judges? So I think these are some of the arguments which are very, very important and crucial to look at why the collegium should appoint judges. We do concede that this is not that the collegium system is perfect. No system is perfect. At the end of the day, it also matters in terms of who the people who replace the collegium system would be. They will have their biases, they will have their problems, and they will have their issues. But on balance, we are here to give you our side of the coin, which essentially is that judges should be appointed by judges. Of course, there can be more transparency. Of course, there can be more checks and balances. Of course, there can be better ways of doing it. But the bottom line is that I urge you, based on the evidence that we presented, to support the motion. I borrow from a famous school's logo, and I hope I pronounce it right, Gyanamev Shakti, knowledge is power. So make this decision with knowledge, and I urge you not only to support this motion in this house, but even outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vishwajit. Now I call upon the 4th speaker for the motion, Sara Lunawat.
I'll begin by introducing what I mean when I continue with my debate, so I'll let you know when to start the time. Considering the arguments that we have today, frankly, it will take me my 4 minutes alone to counter every argument that has been mentioned by the opposition. Continuing, I'll begin by countering some of the kind of skeptical arguments that were presented by the opposition, and then I'll begin by furthering the arguments which were very clearly presented by the proposition, which might have been ignored by the speakers on my left. So I would like to begin now. Let's begin by considering the fact that our speaker 1 very clearly highlighted a policy model. We did not say that the collegium system is bad, so let's end all, let's have anarchy, let's have chaos. No, we gave you a policy model. We gave you the option to continue something further, something that could be better than the collegium system. If we consider all of the speakers here today, Speaker 2 very clearly just summarized their entire speech as, we know this is bad, but this is all we have. But to quote Ma'am Avni again, क्या सवाल करना उचित नहीं है? If we are here today in a world where we are the largest growing democracy, is it not our right to question? Is it not our right to evolve? Is it not our right to continue a system that could be better? I would like to ask all of you here today. We know that the collegium system is bad. Both sides have agreed. So which side do you want to be on? One that hopes for a better future, or one that gives up and says that let's just have faith. Let's just hope that this will be better tomorrow. Let's move on to some of the things Speaker 1 said. So you said that there cannot be neutral decision makers. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, let me help you understand what a myopic blindfold they have put on you. They have told us that what do we have? We have the executive, the iron-fisted executive. We have the judiciary, who is the beacon of hope. They have no biases, apparently. And then we have laymen, like you and I. That's all there is. What about the very active judiciary that exists outside the active judges in our court? Do we not have retired judges? Do we not have legal inspirers? Do we not have people who could be better choices than laymen, like Sir says, like you and I? So I think it is very necessary to question that it is not just 3 stakeholders. We are India, we have countless stakeholders. So let's consider that again and again and again before you take a decision here today. Now let's move on to another fact which was stated here. Something that Ma'am Avni Bansal also touched upon, and let me begin with my clear substantives that take you through the claims, warrants and impacts, something that is very required in this debate. Let's begin with the fact that we have vested interests and loss potential. They have talked about vested interests like I, as a layman, will hire my friend as the chief judge. But what about the fact that this already exists? Ladies and gentlemen, the only thing that has been repeated here today is the surnames that we see in the chief justices today. We see that families upon families repeatedly invoke their own members into the Supreme Court. And we are not saying this as something which is unreasonable, something this is a grand assumption to make. The facts are on our favor. Again, something Ma'am Avni Bansal touched upon. A 2015 study found that 33% of Supreme Court judges, 1 in every 3, is somebody's son, somebody's son-in-law, somebody's daughter-in-law. Is that the Supreme Court we want tomorrow? The situation is even worse in the High Court. Frankly, 1 in every 2 judges in the High Court, and I said, I quote, are from the higher echelons of the judicial families. To do so would mean judges in the High Court, as Justice Krishna Iyer very rightly said in the past. To do so would mean judges in the High Court who were appointed in favor, in preference of superiority, meritocracy, they were bypassed. They will be allotted into the Supreme Court. And what will that mean? It will mean a future tomorrow where the Supreme Court is run by the son and son-in-laws of previous High Court justices. So what about people like you and I? I have nobody in my family who is a judge, but I want to see myself there tomorrow. Do I have to know somebody? Do I have to grease hands? Do I have to shake some hands? Do I have to marry into a family to get into the Supreme Court? I think not. And ladies and gentlemen, let us understand this from 2 different perspectives, the gender and the demographic. Because our opposition speakers were very clear when they said that no woman was appointed in the Chief Justice before the collegium. But do we know the reality today? Let's talk numbers. We've had what, 260 or so Supreme Court judges? How many of them do you think were women? 6. 0.02% Chief Justices today were women. To put that into context, it's easier for me to get into IIT Bombay Electrical Engineering than be a woman who will become a Chief Justice tomorrow. Is that the kind of world we want to live in today? Let's understand demographics again. We talked about these 260 judges. Less than 10 of them were from the Northeast. Because this is a very real consequence of what the opposition is trying to purport. They are not going on blind faith, they are going on sheer ignorance. Because ladies and gentlemen of the House, I would like to ask you very practically. Somebody who has been born and brought up in central India only knows the few handful of people they have worked with. Can they be the best judge of every applicant in this country, of every corner of that world? Can somebody who's been born and brought up in Mumbai or Allahabad, can they know the socio-economic background of a Manipuri judge? Can they understand the ethics and integrity of a Ladakhi judge? This is what we are here to question. Because ladies and gentlemen of the House, the collegium is not the best we have. Critiques have been ongoing every single day. We know it's opaque, we know it's not transparent. We know that something better should come tomorrow. While we cannot give you an entire policy model here today, that is in the hands of the legislative. The NJAC was a step towards the right future. Perhaps it was not the best bill that was needed by India then, but it is a step in the right direction. So ladies and gentlemen of the House, I possess you with 2 worlds. A world where the proposition hopes for a better future. We hope for a tomorrow where there is less bias, less nepotism, more women, more Northeastern judges, more SC, more ST, more representation. Or an opposition that says that this is the best we have, and let's shake hands with the fate we have been given. I would like to remind you all again, we are Indians, we are born from a colonial legacy. We know how to fight. So why should we stop today? Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. You had analyzed the whole topic very well. And now I call upon the last and the 4th speaker against the motion, Hriday Anand. Hriday Anand.
Before I start my debate, if the permission of the chair, I would like to just remind this whole committee, this whole house, that my worthy opposition just quoted that there are less Manipuri judges, there are more Ladakhi judges, less North Indian, more South Indian. I only see South Indian judges. This whole house only sees Indian judges for India, all over India. Only Indian judges. That's it. And now I'll start. When there's a conflict between two people in this nation, they say, I'll see you in court. That is the honest belief in the Indian judicial system. That is the ray of hope that shines for justice. And that is the power of a true democracy like India. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the question today is that who better than a judge would really understand and better write down the possibilities that of a true honest judge. A true honest judge that would be a pillar to let that ray of hope shine on 1.5 billion Indians. Good evening to one and all present here. I, Ridra Anand, would like to strongly put my arguments against the motion that judges should not appoint judges. After this long debated motion, and thanks to my house, I am 100% confident that this system of judges appointing judges is the right system and should be the system going forward. With that, the main points in my arguments are going to be independence of the judiciary, expertise, and promoting accountability. Independence of the judiciary. The constitution of our nation relies heavily upon the independence of three pillars: the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. It is these independent pillars that helps our nation run in checks and balances. Even if an external group does try to hinder the appointation of judges, that basically disrupts this whole process of independence and therefore disrupts the judiciary as we know it. It did happen once in 1982 in the first judge's case, as sir mentioned, with S.P. Gupta versus Union of India. Second, expertise. It is imperative to recognize that the motion talks beyond NJAC. It talks beyond the collegium system, which basically says that this does not mean that no one else can say. This does not mean that no one else can object, advise, or question. The civil society, the legal professionals, the executive all deserve to have a say. This is a democracy after all. However, this house simply suggests that the final say should stay with the judges. Third, promoting accountability. Judges have a vested interest in maintaining the reputation and quality of the judiciary. With that, this peer-driven accountability system will only ensure that the most competent, the most qualified judges will therefore be elected every single time. And that only shows us that these judges, they don't want a system of flaws. They want to excel. They want to create a culture of excellence in the Indian judiciary for years and years to come. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my worthy opponents may have said a few points that, according to them, are more than enough to change this whole system. Well, I say, let's take those points in consideration, let's take them in account, and let's evolve the judiciary into something it has never been, something way better than all. These arguments implying lack of transparency and accountability, well, they are baseless to this house, because I would like to ask my worthy opponents, can't the judges themselves form a new system with more transparency, better system to appoint judges? Why should we change the whole system when we can tweak it to evolve it way more? Or why would the judges who have been serving the judiciary for decades to come, why would they jeopardize the accountability of a court for their minor personal arrangements? It doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? Even with that, Indian judiciary system, with D.Y. Chandrachud, also as my teammate here mentioned, also as Sir Bhushan mentioned, has already brought in an objective-based appointation system for the further appointments to come. With that, they also talk about erosion of trust. I asked them, where is this erosion of public trust? It can already be seen in public perception surveys conducted by the CSDS in 2021 that the majority of respondents in the Supreme Court are showing more than massive enough trust to say that the Supreme Court is the final verdict in India. Also, they talk about lack of diversity very heavily, and I think it is a major concern. I definitely do agree. Even though every judge is Indian after all, there is lack of diversity, but I would definitely argue with that, saying that many countries already have systems in place. And when we talk about India, judges in the 21st century are more than capable, more than competent to take any perspective into account, take any perspective into ruling, and give a fair opinion. That is something they look at even when they appoint other judges. And as ma'am talked about the LGBTQ plus case, that particular case was not a case about gender. That was a case about incompetence. That was a case about missayings. And the judge did not really deserve to be a Supreme Court judge, in a student's opinion, because of what he said about our own nation. Apart from that, there are initiatives being taken in the Indian judiciary, with the flag bearer of them all being the All India Judicial Service Initiative, the AIJS, where the primary objective is to have a lower caste bench too. Sensitization modules are happening all over the country. Diversity is increasing day by day. With that, I would like to conclude saying that this House does not believe that any of these points are valid enough to change this long system of substantial judge appointing judges. There is no denying that a system can improve. There is no denying that a system should evolve. But does that mean we will weaken this long system? We will weaken our own judiciary for the basis of these 4 arguments? I don't think so. Thank you.
As per the format of this debate, we are not going to have the rebuttal round by both the sides, for and against. 2 minutes. 2 minutes each will be given to this one side for, and 2 minutes to the other side against. And then we'll be having a very short questionnaire session where you can put your questions to both the teams, and that, because we are running short of time, so we'll be having only 2 minutes. Any specific question from the House to our esteemed speakers. So first, can we have the rebuttal round first? So I first call upon the team for the motion to have their rebuttal for the speeches made by...
1 minute, and I'll to what Mr. Gopal Shankar Narayan said. So he said that we have not suggested any other system to replace the present collegium system. I did suggest a system. Then I said that there should be a full-time, independent, multi-member commission which should select the judges after laying down a criteria, laying down a method for evaluating candidates on that criteria, and with some transparency. But he said that how can lay persons who may be members of this selection committee be better at judging the suitability of candidates than judges themselves? So I have not said that you cannot have retired judges in this selection committee. You can have retired judges so long as they are full-time. But there need to be some other people as well other than judges. For example, today if you ask a judge, how is the judiciary doing, most of them will say, oh, doing quite well. If you ask lay people in the country, the citizens, how is the judiciary doing, most people will say, doing very badly. Hardly 5% or less than 5% people are able to get justice through this judicial system. So therefore, in your selection committee, you need to have some people who can bring to bear these broader aspects, whether this candidate has sensitivity to the socio-economic reality, whether he understands that the judicial system is crumbling and for what reasons it is crumbling, etc. It's not just that the judges understand these things. There are many other aspects which are required to be seen in judges, which can be sometimes understood better by people who are other than judges. So that's why I say that you can have retired judges, you should have some retired judges in the selection committee, but it should be full-time, and secondly, you need to have some outside people as well, like we have in England. Avani, you can have a...
The motion, we have 5 minutes of rebuttal, and Sir has rebutted for 2 minutes. I'll be rebutting for 2 minutes, and my third speaker will be rebutting for another 1 minute. Now, there are 2 questions that were raised. 2 सवाल पूछे गए थे. पहला सवाल तो ये पूछा गया था कि जजेस को ही सिस्टम रिफॉर्म कर लेने दो, हमें बाहर के लोग क्यों नहीं चाहिए, जजेस पे ट्रस्ट करो ना. आपके 4th स्पीकर ने कहा कि लेट द जजेस रिफॉर्म द सिस्टम. अब सवाल ये है कि यदि आपकी बेहतरी में कोई सिस्टम काम कर रहा है तो आप उस सिस्टम को बदलना क्यों चाहेंगे? ये उसी प्रकार की बात हो गई कि सब कहते हैं कि महिलाओं को संसद में रिजर्वेशन दो, बिल पास कर देते हैं, लेकिन उस बिल को इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं करते, क्योंकि जब महिलाएं आएंगी तो किसी की जगह लेकर आएंगी ना। तो जो सिस्टम आपके लिए अच्छा चल रहा है, उस सिस्टम पे आप बोलो कुछ भी, लेकिन आप करोगे कुछ नहीं। और इसलिए जजेस, जैसे कि मैंने आपको बताया कि 350 परिवार से आते हैं, वो क्यों चाहेंगे कि ये पूरा सिस्टम खुल जाए? एक और बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बात, आज की डेट में भारत में जुडिशरी में रिजर्वेशन अलाउड नहीं है। क्या आपको ये बात पता था? देयर इज नो रिजर्वेशन इन जुडिशरी। और ये भी हम बता दें कि हमारा जो पक्ष है, हम जब बात करते हैं कि महिलाएं हों, अलग अलग सभी तरह के लोग हों, एक रिप्रेजेंटेटिव जुडिशरी हो, तो हम रिजर्वेशन की मांग नहीं कर रहे हैं। हम ये कह रहे हैं कि वो जो सिलेक्ट कमेटी होगी जो जजेस को अपॉइंट करेगी, उसके पास कुछ गाइडलाइंस होगी, उस गाइडलाइंस के तहत जजेस को अपॉइंट किया जाएगा, उन सारी मीटिंग्स के मिनट्स ऑफ मीटिंग लिए जाएंगे, उसका एक अपील प्रोविजन होगा कि यदि मेरा नाम कंसिडर हो रहा है और मुझे लगता है कि मैं तो सारे क्राइटेरिया फुलफिल कर रही हूं, तो वो कमेटी के बाद भी मेरे पास कोई अपील सिस्टम हो। देखिए, आज जब देश में एक मैटर को आने में 50 से 60 साल लग जाते हैं, क्या आपको पता है कि भारत के संविधान में ये प्रावधान है कि एक सुप्रीम कोर्ट दिल्ली में होने की आवश्यकता नहीं है। जैसे मध्य प्रदेश हाईकोर्ट मेन बेंच जबलपुर में है, लेकिन ग्वालियर और इंदौर में बेंचेस हैं। क्या आपको पता है कि संविधान कहता है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट के बेंचेस भी हो सकते हैं? अब जब एक ही सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जजेस अपने से अपॉइंट नहीं हो रहे हैं, तो आने वाले समय में यदि अलग अलग सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जजेस की बेंच होती है, तो हम जजेस को एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव काम से ओवरबर्डन क्यों करें? इनफैक्ट मेरी तो ये भी मांग है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव साइड है, मैटर कैसे जल्दी बढ़ाए जाए, कौन सा मैटर किसके सामने आएगा, वो कन्वेंशन के बजाय एक एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव साइड के लिए एक सुप्रीम कोर्ट का सीईओ क्यों अपॉइंट नहीं होना चाहिए? जजेस जुडिशियल ट्रेनिंग में आए हैं ना, तो वो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में भी क्यों आए? ये सारे रिफॉर्म्स और जजेस के अपॉइंटमेंट का रिफॉर्म एक अलग से अकेला रिफॉर्म नहीं है, इट्स पार्ट ऑफ अ वाइडर सेट ऑफ लीगल रिफॉर्म्स। लेकिन लीगल रिफॉर्म्स आएंगे तब कि जब हम मेन चीज को बदलेंगे। लेकिन आखिरी बात ये कहूंगी कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ऐसे जजेस देखे हैं कि जिनके सामने नतमस्तक होने का मन करता है। भारत का सुप्रीम कोर्ट है जिसमें जस्टिस कृष्ण अय्यर, जस्टिस पीएन भगवती ने पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट लिटिगेशन के नाम पे एक क्रांति मचा दी कि आप और मैं एक पत्र लिखकर सुप्रीम कोर्ट को बता सकते हैं कि क्या हो रहा है और सुप्रीम कोर्ट उस मैटर को एडमिट कर सकता है। तो भारत के सुप्रीम कोर्ट और उस पर बैठे न्यायाधीशों पर सवाल नहीं है, उस कुर्सी पर सवाल नहीं है, सवाल है उस सिस्टम पर जिस पर बार बार ये कहा जाता है कि ये सिस्टम तो चंगा सी, क्योंकि इस देश में सब कुछ चंगा सी नहीं है। और जब आप और हम संविधान की कॉपी अपने हाथों में लेकर, संविधान को दिलों में लेकर सवाल करेंगे, तब शायद एक दिन आएगा कि इस देश में सब कुछ चंगा हो जाएगा। धन्यवाद।
We will begin with the fact that he very well claimed that there is a vested interest to uphold the sanctity of the judiciary. I would like to ask all of you here today, which vested interest do you think is more apparent? One where I would want my son to be the next Chief Justice, or one where I would want the entire judiciary to be great for years and years to come? Let us understand the practical realities before we move on to this utopian idea of the world. Secondly, let's talk about the fact that a lot of the facts and a lot of the cases that were brought forth by the opposition are very clearly false, because they reacted to the LGBTQIA case and they said that there were actual issues. I will tell you what the issue was. This is published on the court's website. The reason that that LGBTQIA member judge was not taken into consideration was because he had a relationship with a Swiss national, which is something that the Supreme Court did not agree with. Do you think this is integrity, ethics, competence? The criteria which you so very clearly touted, I don't see any of them checking the boxes just because I choose to love who I love. Now let's talk about something that their entire argument was based on. Independence of the judiciary, checks and balances. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, checks and balances is a two-way street. You cannot give the executive too much power, but when it comes to giving the judiciary all the power in the world, that is fine. Where are your checks and balances now, sir? What happened? We were in a system where all three pillars of the government were equal, giving the entirety of the judiciary to appoint who they want to appoint. I don't think that's very consonant with the principle of checks and balances. So I would like to stick to time for once, and I would like to end by saying one last thing, that we all know that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. So no matter which pillar of the government you give something to, it will corrupt. but something that we stood for, the proposition stood for, something that all of you here should stand for, is the fact that the Constitution can never be corrupt. Thank you.
नहीं कहा जाए, लेकिन एक ऐसी बॉडी कहा जाए जो जजेस को सिलेक्ट करने का मादा रखती हैं, उनके थ्रू सिलेक्शन हो जाए। बड़ी अजीब सी बात है, मुझे बड़ी हास्यास्पद लगी ये जानते हुए कि वो जजेस जो जज बन करके बैठे हैं, जब तक फैसला कर रहे हैं और उस कॉलेजियम के माध्यम से लोगों को सिलेक्ट करें, तब तक तो वो इनएलिजिबल हैं या इनकॉम्पिटेंट हैं या इस लायक नहीं है कि जजेस को सिलेक्ट करें, और उनके रिटायरमेंट के बाद वही आदमी सिलेक्ट करना शुरू कर दे जजेस को। शायद आपको भी हास्यास्पद लगेगी। दिस इज लाइक सेइंग दैट आवर प्रिंसिपल मैडम इज इनकॉम्पिटेंट टू सिलेक्ट following principal for Delhi College when she is a principal, but after she retires from Delhi College, then she will have a right and the competence to select a principal for Delhi College. Can that happen? Obviously not. If a sitting judge does not have the legal acumen, does not have the ability and capability of selecting a judge as a sitting judge, then obviously he or she is not likely to develop that ability subsequent to his or her retirement. It does not happen. Wisdom has nothing to do with age. And both of you, Sara and Hriday, have shown that fact that you are young, but far better and far promising than any one of us present here. Sit down. God bless you both. Chronology, have faith in this fact that chronology does not confer wisdom. उम्र से अक्ल नहीं आती, और उसका साक्षात उदाहरण मैं हूँ आपके सामने। दूसरी बात, मैं एक बातों को एक तथ्यों पे प्रकाश डालना चाहूँगा कि आज की स्थिति में सुप्रीम कोर्ट में 34 जजेस सिटिंग है। ये तथ्य है, इसमें कहीं कोई शक और शुबे की गुंजाइश नहीं है। 31 में से हैं वो किसी भी सिटिंग जज के लड़का या लड़की नहीं है। ये दर्शित करता है और साबित करता है इस बात को कि हमारे यहाँ कोई नेपोटिज्म नहीं है, और ये सब कॉलेजियम सिस्टम से ही बन के गए, किसी और सिस्टम से बन के नहीं गए। सो लेट्स नॉट डाउट समथिंग अननेसेसरीली। एंड अगेन गोइंग ऑन द अदर साइड, that the fact that I happen to be a son or a daughter of a sitting judge or a member of a a person sitting in the judiciary or coming in from some well-known family does not necessarily mean that I am a fool or a buffoon. I could well be the son and daughter of somebody and be worthy of the post that I am sitting on today. ये तो हो ही सकता है। तीसरी छोटी बात, आपने ये बताया कि साहब अब दूसरे सिस्टम से हम सिलेक्ट करें। एक छोटे से तथ्य मैं आपके सामने रखना चाहूँगा कि 2014 से लेकर के 2024 के बीच में उन अपराधों की संख्या जो एमपी और एमएलएस के खिलाफ रजिस्टर्ड थी, मैंने आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट ऑफेंसेस, आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट पेटी ऑफेंसेस। ये 151 के ऑफेंस नहीं है कि सड़क पे आप धरना प्रदर्शन करते हुए पकड़े गए। आई एम टॉकिंग टू यू अबाउट सीरियस ऑफेंसेस बीइंग एलिज्ड फॉर विच दीज पर्सन्स आर बीइंग प्रोसिक्यूटेड। 34% एमएलए और एमपी जो थे 2014 में वो थे जिनके खिलाफ अपराध पंजीबद्ध थे और बड़े अपराध पंजीबद्ध थे। ये फिगर बढ़ के 2019 में 43% हुआ, और यही फिगर बढ़ के 2024 में 46% हुआ। 46% हिंदुस्तान का ये दुर्भाग्य कहिए कि वो लोग हैं जो आपके मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट हैं और विधानसभा के सदस्य हैं जिनके खिलाफ अपराध पंजीबद्ध हैं। ऐसा कौन सा सिस्टम आप बनाएंगे कॉलेजियम के अलावा जिसमें कि सरकार का हस्तक्षेप ना हो, विधायिका का हस्तक्षेप ना हो? The moment you speak about interruption or inclusion of the opinion of the legislature, forget about the executive. सरकारी नौकर और सरकारी अधिकारी कितने ईमानदार या कितने बेईमान होते हैं आप मुझसे बेहतर समझते हैं। I am not going there for a minute. But the moment you talk about participation or opinion of the legislature, जो विधायिका है, this is the stuff that you are going to have. Do you want this thing for a second, or are you okay with this system? और एक बात मैं आपको यकीन से कहता हूँ, हम किसी भी तरफ से खड़े होकर के बहस कर लें, यकीन मानिए कि अगर आज भी किसी एक सिस्टम पे हम हिंदुस्तानियों को अगर विश्वास है तो वो जुडिशियल सिस्टम ऑफ इंडिया है। एंड हैट्स ऑफ एंड सैल्यूट टू दैट जुडिशियल सिस्टम। ठीक है, हम डिबेट के लिए ज़रूर ये कह सकते हैं कि सिस्टम में अपने फ्लॉज या गलतियाँ, मैंने खुद एडमिट करा, लेकिन फ्लॉज और गलतियाँ होने का मतलब ये नहीं कि आपकी अगर एक उंगली पे चोट लग जाती तो उस उंगली को आप काट नहीं देते, उसका इलाज करते हैं। अगर आपके दांत से ज़बान कट जाती तो आप अपने दांत को तोड़ नहीं देते हैं, आप अपने दांत को शायद घिसवा लेते हैं या आगे से ध्यान से खाना शुरू कर देते हैं। तो सवाल ये है कि इसको और बेहतर कैसे बनाया जाए, न कि रिप्लेस करा जाए। आप लोगों का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। थैंक यू सो मच।
Definitely do understand the time constraints, but there is just one point that I believe this House cannot go without noticing. As my proposition stated that what I said about the LGBTQIA plus case is factually inaccurate. Well, the actual fact is that the case was not really brought into light because it was not the judiciary that said no. It was actually the collegium system that recommended that name. It was the executive that my proposition has been really, really vouching for so long that actually said no for that particular case. And on reply to that, as you said very well, checks and balances, a two-way street. it is about checks and balances from the executive and the judiciary both that needs a right diverse, the right mindset to bring a good bench on our judiciary. Apart from that, it is also quite redundant from them that the problem with nepotism of the same surname repeating again and again. Well, I would like to just resonate on this last point that the 50th Supreme Court Chief Justice, D.Y. Chandrachud, who has actually been the one who's brought in so many objective-based, so many fair implementations into our system, is the son of another Supreme Court Chief Justice. So just that example should be well enough to set it. Thank you.
Point, because both speakers 2 and 4 reiterated this, and I'm sure all of you remember, the 2015 report, which apparently said that 30% of High Court judges are children of judges, 50% of Supreme Court are children of judges. This is completely false. That 2015 report was by a lawyer who has been convicted of contempt of court by the Kerala High Court, separately by the Bombay High Court, twice by the Supreme Court of India for false statements. He has been banned from 2 high courts from appearing. He has piqued the judges last week. If you get onto YouTube and you'll see it. This shred of evidence that they're relying on to parrot a lie, like Goebbels said, is how you make a lie the truth. This is completely false, and that's the mainstay of their argument. I think nothing more needs to be said, but I'll say one factual thing. Today we have 34 judges of the Supreme Court. 3 of them admittedly have parents who are judges. 31 do not. Last week, and I can share this, last week, now it's done. My wife, who's a practicing lawyer, was invited to be a judge. She has no parents who are judges. I only coincidentally met her after we were both lawyers and we got married while we were in the profession. So this low opinion that you have, that it's only a bunch of families, 300, which is anecdotal and false, I think should be buried with the arguments for the proposition. Thank you.
For and against the motion, the points that have churned out from this debate are whether this collegium system in which the judges appoint judges is flawless, or it has flaws, shortcomings, and if it has shortcomings, those shortcomings and flaws are to be cured, rectified, or the system needs to be scrapped. Number 1. Number 2, if it is to be scrapped, then what is the alternate? Can the government be left with the option, can be given this option of appointing the judges who is the biggest litigant in the courts? Now, can we have a system in which we can think of a system like a commission or a body which has judges, some of the members of the executive, and some senior members of the bar in which the lawyer has to be appointed. The lawyer is to be picked up for an appointment of the judge, as a judge. Suppose a lawyer is to be appointed from Indore or Gwalior, then the collegium sitting at Jabalpur, is the collegium sitting at Jabalpur well qualified, competent to have the lawyer selected in Indore or Gwalior? So the bar should also be taken into consideration, the senior members of the bar should also be taken into consideration while selecting a lawyer for the judgeship. So now, since we have had good points from both the parties, for and against, now we'll have a voting round after the debate as to what is the opinion of this House with regard to this topic. So can we have the hands raised, those who believe that judges should be appointed by judges? Can I have the hands raised by the members of the House who support this, that the judges should be appointed by the judges? Prior to the debate, the members of the House who were in favor of this motion, that the judges should be appointed by judges. Judges, I'm not talking about I'm only talking about the phrase judges should be appointed. For and against, Judges should be appointed by the judges. the members of the House who were in support of this, they were 38 initially before the debate. And that number has risen to 41 after the debate. In any case, it was a thought-provoking, very exciting, very relevant, and we had very good speakers from both the sides. And this, in fact, this deliberation, this debate is for the purpose that a thought, this deliberation should, in fact, sow a seed in the minds of the people who are sitting at the helm of the affairs, that how the judges should be appointed and what system has to be adopted. So I'm very thankful to all these speakers and the members of the House who patiently heard all these speakers, and very, very thankful to, especially to Prashant Bhushan ji, Gopal ji, Ajay ji, Avni ji, and Vishwajit ji. And special thanks to Hriday and Sara.
From our principal, Dr. Gunmeet Bindra.